3, 4.
We just live right now, man. It's going down, excited for the season. You know, we coming off a playoff win. I mean, you know, we had a couple wins.
Back to Dear Diaries, a Milwaukee Bucks podcast presented by us, the staff at Brew Hoop. My name is Van Fayez. I'm stepping into the hosting role again, unfortunately for maybe some of you. But Kyle, he has been called away for some back-to-school responsibilities. And Jackson's working. And Jack is, I think he's probably still asleep because in Adelaide, I think it's closing in on 7 a.m. Regardless, we had to call an audible here, and I'm back hosting again this week. But you're not here for me. Who you should be here for today is making his return to the podcast, Gale Klappa, who is the host of Courtside with Gale Klappa. It's a podcast that you can hear on Bucks Plus Audio. You can also hear it as part of the Bucks in 60 program, which airs Monday evenings or Tuesday evenings, depending on when the Bucks game is during the season, at 8 p.m., 620 WTMJ. And he is also part of the Bucks ownership group. So, Gale, thank you again for joining us. Welcome back. How is your off season?
It actually feels long. Doesn't it feel like a long time since we saw the Bucks last on the court? But a terrific off season, and good to be back with you, Van. Thanks for inviting me.
Of course, yeah, we're glad to have you. It's just not the same watching, you know, the summer league team, because it's like they're wearing a Bucks uniform and it is NBA basketball and it's interesting, but it's like the team just kind of comes together for a few weeks and then it comes apart. So it's like it's hard for me to think of them as the Bucks, you know, but
right.
We are, I think we're just, I guess it's 4 weeks from today is the first preseason game. I forget who they're playing, but it's on the 6th of October, I remember. And that would mean we're 3 weeks away from Media Day, which is typically the week before that. So it's getting close. We're not too far away from NBA basketball, and we won't be too far away from your show and your pod returning to the airwaves. You said you start up just right before the regular season, right?
Yep, the week of October 15.
Okay, well, we'll be on the lookout for that. And yeah, everyone listening, make sure you subscribe to Courtside with Gale Klappa. You can get wherever your podcasts, your choice of podcast vendors is. And also bucks.com/plus. Is that correct? Where the episodes are as well.
Amen.
And he's got all kinds of great guests on there. I know you've had, like, obviously Doc Rivers, some other assistant coaches, players. You've had, I remember last year you had the deputy commissioner on.
Yes. And we've had Jimmy Haslam and Wes Edens on.
Yes, of course. And the ownership. Yeah, of course. Yes.
And you shouldn't forget Peter Fagan, the president of the Bucks. Yes. And John Horst, who's both of whom are among my favorite guests, Peter and John.
Yeah. Yeah, they're always good interviews. The segments you have, and like just getting to hear these guys in a little bit longer format than we're used to. It's probably the longest format we really hear any of the Bucks, the front office or coaching personnel in, because in post game we get maybe 5 minutes with them. So. And
Dan, to your point, one of the things I've found interesting over the years being able to do the podcast, particularly with the younger players, many of our podcast, in many instances, is the first time that a younger player, like, say, for example, AJ Green, has ever done an extended interview.
Yeah.
I mean, they should say they're caught at, after the game on court or in the media room for a couple of minutes. But really, they're not exposed to extended interviews, and for many of them, it's their first experience.
Yeah, that's okay. I didn't realize that. That's pretty great. Reminds me of how at Summer League this year we had one of our contributors, Finn Keel, who was on this season preview a few weeks ago. He went down to Vegas and he got to meet Bogoljub Markovic, the second round pick this year, and it was the first interview that Markovich had done with like English speaking press. So
that?
wasn't on the air yet, but yeah, maybe he'll be on there on your podcast soon, and you'll get the first. We maybe got the first print interview with him, but you can get the first audio one. So,
terrific.
Yeah, it's great. Anyway, so if you are new to listening to the season preview series, and I know Gale has been on the podcast before. This is his first time on the season preview series, and we hope it's not his last. So what we do is with all of our guests, whether they be other Brew Hoop contributors or people from around Bucks media, like the Johnsons, who we had recently. We have last week we had Justin Garcia and Camille Davis from Lockdown Bucks on, but we ask everyone the same questions. And we just want to get everyone's take on some of the interesting topics or things we'll be following, at least in the early part of the season, some of them all season long. So we will open it up with the first thing we'll see from the Bucks this year, either in that first preseason game in 4 weeks or on opening night. But the starting lineup and also the closing lineup, specifically in a playoff game, which we hope the last thing we see of the Bucks this year will be that lineup in a probably hopefully a late series, like something like into June, but a closing lineup in the playoffs. So Gale, step into Doc Rivers' shoes, and who would you have for each of these groups? The opening night starting five and the closing lineup in the playoffs could be the same group.
Yeah, fascinating question. Well, obviously you start with Giannis. And given all of the way the play in the NBA has evolved, it won't surprise you for me to say that I think Giannis's health will be more important than ever to a Bucks season and Bucks success in the playoffs this year. But I'm guessing for the Bucks to get where they want to be a high seed going into the playoffs, that they will have to be healthy, and Giannis probably will have to be healthy through maybe playing as many as 70 games. So we start with Giannis, then obviously Miles Turner. And we can talk more about the Miles acquisition, which I think was just pure brilliance on the part of John Horst. That guy's just a magician, honest to goodness. He pulls stuff out of a hat that just amazes me.
Caught me by surprise. That was just crazy. Just hearing about how the machinations to get that done. Yeah, following along with that, it's like, what?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, he's really talented. Mm-hmm. So obviously you have a given. You have Giannis and Miles Turner. I suspect you're going to see at shooting guard, you're going to see Gary Trent Jr. I think, and we'll see. But there's a lot of hope among many of us that the Bucks will see in Kyle Kuzma what they thought they got when they traded him, or when they received him in the trade for Chris Middleton. So that may be the starting night, 4 of the starting night lineup entries: Giannis, Miles Turner, Kyle Kuzma, and Gary Trent Jr. And then the big question mark is there a point guard in the house? And maybe we see the player they call Scoot, who came to us, mid-season last season and showed a lot of flair. Mm-hmm. It will be interesting to see also, because as you know, the Bucks brought in a couple of other experienced point guards in the offseason, under the radar type of acquisitions, but players who are very solid and who, in the right system could really make a difference. Cole Anthony and Gary Harris. And I don't think he would play point guard, but interesting to see how things develop with Amir Coffey. A guy that Doc Rivers knows extremely well. He played for Doc out with the Clippers a number of years ago. Big body, or 6'7", 210, can shoot. I think he's got over a 38.4% career three-point percentage in terms of three-point shooting. Can play defense. He might be the sleeper acquisition. Not sure he's a starter, but he might well be the sleeper acquisition of the year. So those would be my initial thoughts for what they're worth, Van.
Sure. Yeah. I think, we towards the end of the year, you're seeing what Kevin Porter Jr. did, like when Damian Lillard was out with his DVT. And then after a couple of games in, his first playoff run, getting his sea legs, there's a lot to like with his performance as a Buck. And I have to imagine, he'll be given the opportunity, I think, to play a lot of point guard for a winning team for the first time in his career. But you mentioned Cole Anthony, and I wasn't all too familiar with, I would say, the non-offensive aspects of his game. I've seen him throughout the years. I know he can score the basketball. I know he's got more typical distributor skills than maybe other guys on the roster. So he's kind of, in the sense, the truest point guard. But defensively, he's not someone I really thought of as a much of a defender. But right. I think some are saying he's a bit underappreciated. Would you give him, do you think he's got a shot to take that job at any point?
I think you always say yes. I mean, John Horst has found a way to be able to bring in seasoned talent, and in many cases for that talent to really bloom in the Bucks system. Mm-hmm. So I would say there's certainly a chance there, no question about that. And then you ask Van about the playoff closing lineup, and there I think there may be an interesting twist. Clearly depends upon who we're playing in the playoffs. Yeah. But you saw last year a number of times when Doc Rivers went small.
Yeah.
And you could
the triumvirate, as Marcus Johnson calls it.
There you go. And you could see, depending upon who we're playing, a lineup that goes small with maybe Giannis at the 5, maybe Giannis at the center position. And then you've got shooters all over the place, including someone who took a big step up last year in AJ Green.
Right.
So it will be very interesting to see not only what the starting lineup looks like, but in parts of the game, in portions of the game where Doc feels like going small, fast with a lot of shooters around could be advantageous for the Bucks. I think there's a lot of flexibility and a lot of talent on this team. I honestly believe, again, health depending, this will be a better team than we saw last year on the floor.
Yeah, I think the parts fit together in a way that, at least on paper, they haven't in the last couple of years. And going small with Marcus Johnson calls it the triumvirate. Maybe we'll hear that on broadcast this year. But Kevin Porter Jr., Gary Trent Jr., and AJ Green were closing a lot of games there.
Right.
That 8-game winning streak at the end of the year, they were closing a lot of those. In the postseason, they were closing a lot of those. And that was the starting lineup in Game 5 alongside Giannis and Bobby Portis.
Right.
To me, what's interesting about that closing group, and it is, like you say, going to depend on who the Bucks are playing in a series. Like, Portis worked quite well with that group. The numbers in the regular season, in a pretty small sample size, were great. I've talked about them on this podcast before, but it was their best lineup that had played at least 20 minutes last year. In terms of net rating, it was only 40 minutes or so a small sample size, of course, but enough there to dream on. And even in the first round series against Indiana, pretty good. I think it was about plus 6.3. So I look at that lineup with Portis and see how it worked. Now I think about it with Miles Turner, and closing against teams like, let's say, the Knicks. Certainly, you like his size in there to deal with Karl Anthony Towns. Depending if they're playing a team like Cleveland, depending on what Cleveland does with their two bigs. Then another team that's up and coming, Orlando, has a lot of size up front, but not necessarily a true center. And maybe like you could use Bobby Portis in that line, because I liked how Portis fit in that group too. But I mean, I have to imagine that despite maybe some of the struggles Turner had in the NBA Finals, they're going to be closing games with him. And let's keep going with Miles Turner right now, because of course he was the big splashy acquisition that none of us saw coming.
Right.
And I mean, even you, I guess, in the ownership group. So we weren't the only ones that were caught by surprise here in the fan world. But now that he's in the fold here, he's been compared a lot in recent years, particularly by Bucks fans, to the outgoing center, Brook Lopez, who of course had a very successful tenure here in Milwaukee and was not a not a spring chicken anymore, but a lot of what he did so well, it just fits so perfectly next to Giannis. And a lot of people, myself included, over the years, have looked at Miles Turner and what he's done in Indiana and thought, that's something. When it becomes time for Brook Lopez to move on, that's a player who maybe could fill that role and fill it well without skipping a beat. But what do you think? I mean, do you think that with Turner they should just kind of carry over what they've been doing on both ends of the floor? Because obviously he can stretch the floor on offense, and on defense he's a rim protector. But like, would this be? Would this be the year that we see like a little bit more branching out in terms of, especially defensively, when it comes to the big rotation and having Turner in it?
Well, it's a great question, Van, and a couple of thoughts again for what they're worth. I mean, first of all, and I want to preface everything I say here with, I am a personal huge Brook Lopez fan. I mean, the guy's just. He's
Same here.
One of the few people in the history of the NBA who's actually been able to remake himself. And still, when he was Brooklyn Brook down in the paint in Brooklyn, still the highest scoring individual in Brooklyn Nets history. The guy's just phenomenal, and very few shot blockers equal his capability. But I think something happened over the course of the last 2 or 3 years that affected Brook's defensive capability. And that's just the way the game has evolved. I mean, Brook's strength, as you pointed out, Van, is really on defense. I mean, phenomenal shot blocker, right? But if you have an offense against Brook where you pull him out to the 3-point line, and we saw that more and more as teams tried to attack the Bucks defense, at his size and age, he just didn't have the agility to be an effective defender against really quick guards or really quick, young, athletic players out in space. And I think Miles Turner, younger, more athletic, has more capability on defense outside the paint, if you will. And more, you just watch these NBA games, as you know, centers are being pulled out. They're being pulled out from under the paint. And I think one of the weaknesses of the Bucks defense last year was Brook's inability to really handle that as effectively as any of us, including him, would have liked to. So I think overall the Bucks defense will be improved with Miles Turner because he is more agile, younger, greater athleticism, and still has that shot blocking capability. So we shall see. But I think as the game the way it's played in the NBA has evolved, I think getting younger, getting more agile, getting quicker, and getting better able to defend at the point of attack out by the 3-point line is really a key to improving the Bucks defense.
Yeah, I know you'll get a lot of agreement from Bucks fans there. For many years, especially under Mike Budenholzer, we saw how effective a drop zone defense worked with Brook Lopez as the main anchor of that. And we still saw that at times last year, and it was still good at times as well. But maybe like a more of a hedge and recover scheme, or just a very switchy scheme is something that, the Bucks have also used in years past, like when Lopez has back surgery a couple years ago, Bobby Portis was constantly out at the point of attack. He would blitz even sometimes too.
Right.
But with and switching, once like PJ Tucker and Drew Holiday were around, became a lot more commonplace too. But I just, I'm curious to see how much of that they'll employ this year, because I do think that like the style of defense we've seen in recent years from the Bucks is probably not going to be their base look this year.
Ben, I think you're right. I would guess, don't know, but I would guess that the base defense may involve a lot of switching.
And I know Doc's.
We saw more and more of that in Doc's system last year.
Yeah.
And with the addition of Miles, and as you say, Bobby Portis showing an ability to defend out by the 3-point line, I'm guessing that you may see a lot more switching in terms of base defense in place in the season to come. We'll see.
Yeah, I think those Clippers teams, as I recall, were pretty switch-heavy teams. Certainly, like in the latter days of Rivers' tenure there with Kawhi Leonard and Paul George. And, you mentioned Brooklyn Brook, who we saw plenty of flashes of in Brook Lopez's kind of middle tenure, the middle of his Bucks tenure. Do you think, with Turner's prolificness in the mid-range, like especially in that kind of floater area, because he does take a fair number of shots there. He's kind of a 3-level guy. Do you think they'll look to, one, involve him in actions with Giannis as a screener, or maybe I think Kevin Porter Jr. and Cole Anthony, I really like that two-man, the concept of that two-man group, because Turner, as you may know, and as we've talked about on the pod before, his two-man game with Halliburton, that was the top pick and roll combination, with Halliburton as the ball handler, and of course Turner as a screener in the league last year in terms of points per play. So do you think that they use him more as a roller than we saw in Indiana? And do you think he looks to get into that mid-range a bit more, playing a little bit of that Brook Lopez role, maybe as getting down towards the rim and getting like one of those little hook shots coming across the lane? Do you think we'll see some of that from him?
We could well, but I will say this. When you look at how effective he was as a facilitator, and as you say, he and Halliburton had great chemistry. It's going to be interesting to see how much they use him as a roller versus how much he's just a facilitator. And I don't say just in that sense, but how much they use him as a facilitator. The guy, obviously, as you say, is a 3-level shooter. I mean, he's great down by the rim. He does have a good mid-range shot. He's been effective from 3-point land. I will say this, though. If I were Gary Trent Jr., I would be, on my knees thanking God every night that we've got Giannis and Miles Turner, because those guys are going to be looking for the wide open shots, and Gary Trent Jr. is going to be like, man, they can't double team Miles and Giannis. I'm going to have a lot of free shots.
I remember last year at Media Day, Taurean Prince talking about how part of his calculus in deciding to come to the Bucks wasn't just, Darvin Ham had rejoined the staff, but it was he and maybe his agent gave him this data. He had found kind of the places where Damian Lillard and Giannis were feeding shooters shots, like where on the perimeter these their kick out passes were going to. And he really liked what he saw. And I have to imagine, now with like a more of a threat with the ball in his hands, it'll just open up those opportunities even more. And I think, not just for guys like Gary Trent or AJ Green to have wide open shots, but also I think, Giannis himself is primed to have, I think, another big year, but maybe a bit of a unique year compared to what we've seen in the last few seasons. Not just because he doesn't have like a star running mate for the first time in quite a while, but also just because of just the makeup of the team now and what he's going to be asked to do. So in terms of how that's going to look on the stat sheet, I'm curious about what you think, because, you know, this is a guy who, for the last 2 years, the only player in NBA history, he's done it twice, to average over 30 points a game and shoot 60% from the floor.
Right.
And we're used to a great being him, you know, racking up tons of boards. He's usually between 11 and 12.
In fact, he was at 11.9 last year, average rebounds.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And you know, he over the years, especially when you know, he's getting to kind of roam off ball on defense, like, you know, when he won Defensive Player of the Year in 2020. He gets plenty of steals and blocks, but the interesting thing to me is assists. Like, where, you know, the whole conceit of this question is to predict, you know, his counting stats like points, rebounds, stocks, which are of course steals plus blocks, but also his usage. And to me, the most interesting one is what happens with his assists. Like, does he set a career high this year?
I would be, it's a great point, man. I would be shocked if Giannis stays healthy that he did not set a career high in assists this year. And the other thing that I've picked up being around the team is he loves the role of playmaker. So he doesn't see being a playmaker and having a lot of assists. He doesn't see that as detrimental to his game. He loves doing that. And one of the big things that we heard Doc talk about, Doc Rivers, the head coach of the Bucks in the past year, was how much improved from a high level to begin with Giannis's passing was, and his ability to see the court and see the game. And now with the kind of shooting capability that is surrounding him, my goodness, I would guess and predict that he will have a record year of triple doubles, but that second part, the assists, will be even greater than in prior years.
Yeah, in the last several games of the year, I can't remember exactly the range if it coincided with that 8-game win streak, but he was averaging a triple double at the very end of the year once Dame was out. And while I mean, his career high in assists is 6.5, and yeah, I think that's likely to jump. And I guess maybe the main question is then, does his scoring line, like, is he, because he's facilitating more, does he dip back under 30 points a game? What do you think?
I honestly don't think so.
Me either.
I would say, again, the dude's a triple-double machine, but I think he'll average over 30 points a year, and his assists will go up.
Yeah, it's...
And if that's the case, then we're going to have a very powerful offensive team.
Yeah, I think hearing that, he would have to get some MVP consideration regardless of the team's record. If you're averaging 30 points a game and you're getting somewhere around 8 assists per game. And of course he's going to, I think, you know, Turner isn't known as a great rebounder, but much like Brook Lopez, the Pacers have always rebounded the ball better when he's on the floor, even if he wasn't collecting too many rebounds himself. So I don't foresee much of a drop-off.
A point there, and I'm glad you brought that up. I remember a conversation way back when with John Horst. And it was the year after he had attracted Brook Lopez to Milwaukee. And, you know, John is a guy who loves advanced analytics. And I asked him to give me an example of how he used advanced analytics, for example, to decide that he really wanted to attract Brook Lopez here. And he made the point that you just made about team rebounding when Brook was on the floor.
Mm-hmm.
He said that the year that Brook was in LA, his rebounding stats were not great. But when he looked deeper, the team rebounding was better every time that Brook was on the floor than when he was off the floor. And I think you're going to see the same thing with Miles Turner.
Yeah, I was heartened to see that Turner also, had such a good effect on team rebounding, because that's something I think a lot of people didn't appreciate about Brook Lopez was the way he boxed out and the way he improved the Bucks immediately upon arriving in Milwaukee, to being one of the best defensive rebounding teams. I believe they were topping the league in defensive rebound rate a number of times over Lopez's tenure, and it was still good even the last few years. So, I think Turner is going to continue that tradition a bit.
Amen.
So, yeah, I think Giannis, like, if he has the kind of season we're talking about here, and we'll get to this a little bit later in terms of what we think the Bucks, how they will finish in the East, but if we hit some of the ceilings, the regular season ceilings here, it's going to be hard to ignore him in the MVP race, although there will be people who ignore him regardless. But I don't know about that anyway. So we talked earlier about AJ Green in terms of like someone who made a bit of a jump last year, and I'm curious to know who you think on the team is going to make that kind of jump this year, like just a more significant impact on the team as compared to a year ago. I have someone in mind. I'm curious to hear if you will mention the same player.
I'm hoping, Van, that it's Kevin Porter Jr.
Okay.
He obviously made a real impact. He was only with the Bucks, for a portion of the season, obviously. But he has an opportunity here, and if you're right, and I think you make a good point that he may be given the opportunity to be the starting point guard. He's got a tremendous opportunity to make an even larger impact on the team, both offensively and defensively. He seems to have a chemistry with Giannis. He's got a ton of energy. He's pesky on defense. But if he can sustain, I think the question is, if he's a starter, and I think he will be at least at the beginning, can he sustain that level of energy and output as a starter with that many minutes through a long season? But if he can step up and make an even bigger impact, it will be huge for the Bucks.
It's interesting to look at the arc of his career. Over, he's been in the league now. He was drafted in 2019 with the Bucks pick, actually 30th in the first round. But early in his career, he was on Cleveland. He was on Houston. These were teams that were at the bottom of the standings, but he was a key player, especially on those Houston teams. We all remember him dropping 50 on the Bucks a few years ago. The offensive ceiling with him, I think, is so high, but I worry sometimes. I like what he brings to the team, but I worry maybe we're over indexing a bit on how he did upon arrival in Milwaukee as compared to the front half of his season in LA, which you look at just the split in his shooting and his efficiency numbers, and it couldn't be wider. He was, I think, barely over 40% on the floor with LA, and then and not over 30% from three, and he's almost 50% from the field and well over 40 from three as a Buck. And the player, exists somewhere in between there, I'm sure. Hopefully it hews more towards what we saw towards the end of the season. But the player that we saw in Houston, which was the guy who was averaging about 15 to 16 points and shot about 37% from three, getting that consistently over the regular season will be great. It's just I wonder sometimes, it's like how much of that was the situation on that Houston team, which was, again, not a good team. But I remember, being at Fiserv watching that team. It ran a lot. They had Jalen Green. They had let's see, I think it was Kevin Porter, but the main guy I remember was Jalen Green, and just how he was jumping out of the gym. And I see some of that in this current Bucks team with the way they've gotten younger this year. So I wonder if like what we saw from Kevin Porter Jr. all those years ago in Houston, if like that could fit in on a winning team. I was wondering if actually I think Kevin Porter Jr. is a great choice. But I was wondering if you might say Ryan Rollins, because he's one of my favorite players to think about and talk about. And just real quick, want to ask you one question that I've asked of everyone who I've had on this pod, who I've been hosting with, just to see what you think about him defensively. Like I look at you mentioned point of attack defense earlier. I look at Rollins as kind of being the point of attack guy that the Bucks have needed ever since Javon Carter and Drew Holiday left, of course. And Drew Holiday, one of the best point of attack defenders in NBA history, but of course, Bulldog was quite renowned for his full court defense as well. Do you think Rollins, who is coming back he had shoulder surgery in the offseason, played through a dislocated or a separated shoulder throughout all of last year, do you think he's on like a Javon Carter level right now defensively? Can he be that guy for this team?
He can be, but he's a couple of leaps away from, I think, that kind of ability to defend. Although he sure has shown the tendencies, hasn't he? I mean, the guy is intrepid. The guy he's got grit, and he's got defensive ability, as well as being able to hit from three, particularly from the corner three, as you know. So yeah, I mean, you could have something there. I think he could clearly make a leap in the coming year, and we shouldn't keep his name out of the discussion here. I mean, you think about the young guys like AJ Green and Ryan Rollins. They can really make a difference coming off the bench, no question about that. Back, if I could, do a second to Kevin Porter Jr.
Of course.
And you're properly concerned about reversion to the mean, if you will. The hope I would put out in terms of that he doesn't fully revert to the mean is just two things. One, maturity. I mean, he's been around the league now, as you say, since 2019. He's grown some. I think he's put some of his personal problems behind him. And the second point is coaching. Mm-hmm. I remember distinctly in a conversation on our podcast with Doc Rivers, and I asked him about Kevin Porter Jr. as Kevin Porter was coming in. And he said, the guy's got enormous talent. And he said, the first thing I said to him when he walked in the door was, we are going to coach you. And later in the season, I asked Doc, how's that going? And he said he's been incredibly receptive to coaching. And they found, I know from talking to Doc on the podcast, they found, I don't know if I would call it a flaw, but they found a little issue in his game that they think they were able to fix that really helped him increase his scoring. Apparently, when he started to drive to the basket, when he saw a lane and started to drive to the basket, his tendency would be at some point to stop and pull up. Mm-hmm. And Doc and Darvin and the other coaches are telling him, don't stop. Don't pull up. Keep driving. Mm-hmm. If you get blocked, you can kick it out. But don't hitch. Don't stop. Keep driving. And they kept pounding that into him. And Doc feels like it's made a difference in his scoring ability.
That's really interesting because, one thing that impressed me so much about KPJ towards the end of the season was his driving ability. And he had this really nice hezzy Like he could get to probably not quite the block, but close, somewhere in that 6 to 7 feet, 5, 7 feet range. And you could see him, he could weave very well through a team's interior defense, and then would be able to get up a shot like around or through a defender. And I really liked the way he would time things, like I said, the hesitation. And I just there's never really been like in recent memories, I haven't seen a Buck who could really do that. I mean, obviously Damian Lillard was great at getting to the rim, but he was a very fluid guy inside. And the way that Porter could create a look inside the paint, it reminded me a little bit of like, what you see Kyrie Irving or someone do. So it's interesting to hear that, like, it sounds like a bit of like a pitcher, like someone who'd been pitching against a team for many years goes and joins like a rival team, like maybe like on the Brewers right now, someone like Jose Quintana, who was with the Cubs and the Cardinals, and they come to this new team and say, you've been tipping your pitches for many years, like you've been doing this and this, and like maybe don't do that anymore, and then leads them to have a lot more success. So that's a really interesting nugget there about KPJ. And yeah, I'm that's something I might try to ask him about or Doc about, because it's always fascinating to hear about how teams, when a player joins their system, what they do to kind of integrate them, and how they also would change that player's game a little bit. But then, like seeing some of the stuff from KPJ last year that I really liked. It's interesting to know that, like they were having him probably finish a bit more than he had before. So speaking of KPJ, we've done this with a group of players, like 3-4 players every year, where, and these are usually like, we're not talking like Giannis or Dame or Chris Middleton the years, like more guys in like role players, starters who are like pretty important to the team, like who play a lot of minutes, but just who is going to be most important to the team and their season this year. Kevin Porter, Gary Trent, Kyle Kuzma, and AJ Green. We've gotten a wide variety of answers to this question, which I find really fascinating to see where each of these guys slot into people. But how would you rank them in terms of their importance? Those four.
Well, I would say all of the above, but
I should make a disclaimer that we can't say like all are important. Just,
but I guess in all of them, if they can take a leap, will be really, really important to the Bucs' success. But the biggest question mark in my mind right now, and I'm sure it's in the minds of most Bucs fans, is Kyle Kuzma. If he can be the guy that helps stretch the floor, if he can play reasonable defense, which he showed in the early games after being traded to Milwaukee, but if he can become the player in terms of scoring and defense that we saw in Washington, over 20 points a game, solid defense, agile, quick, can stretch the floor, somebody else that can run with Giannis, I think he could be a key ingredient. And obviously, when we traded for him, the Bucs felt he was an important cog in the starting lineup. So, I think time will tell, obviously, but I think the progress of Kyle Kuzma, and can he be the player we thought he would be when the Bucs traded for him, I think that's a huge key to the Bucs season coming up.
Yeah, you're not the first person who has said he might be like the key player to this team this year. I mean, personally, I think, especially with everything we were just talking about with Kevin Porter Jr. and just how his ceiling, is something that a lot of fans are dreaming about. He's kind of, to me, I would say the guy in terms of like who could really impact team success. Like if he has, because I think he's 24. He's very young. He's been in the
Very
league a while, but theoretically he's not in his prime yet.
And he's been on a championship team, Van.
Yeah, if there is another level to his game that we don't see, I mean, it's like, okay, you think like, all right, is there an all-star here? That's the high end of the outcomes. And also, like, as a lead guard, because to be an all-star, that's what you got to be as a point guard, as a scoring guard, especially in today's NBA. Like in Houston, as we were discussing earlier, like the system was different. Coaching, as you mentioned, I wouldn't say he at any point in his career was until going to Los Angeles, of course, with Tyronn Lue, was working with like a very high level NBA coach. So all of these things make me a little bit less worried about what I saw in Houston, just with him as a lead guard and ball handler, like just having a little bit of pause with that. Like, can that contribute to winning basketball? So I think he's very important. But yeah, Kuzma, like, if he is the player that they want him to be, like you mentioned, I think that will go a long way too. Not just this year for the Bucks, but also following season. And Trent and Green, they fill kind of similar roles on this team. And I think you could, maybe an outsider would look at those two on paper and think that they're largely the same player. And their skills are a bit redundant on this team, but I think they work very well as your shooting guard tandem. And they have some size as well, where they can play up the positional spectrum at the other wing spot. But do you think that Trent specifically, do you think that there's still another, there's a higher ceiling, maybe not another gear, because we did see him in Toronto, like average 18 points a game as kind of, again, not on exceptional teams, but a featured scorer, like a third option on those teams. Do you think that there's a chance he could be like that kind of offensive force that we were talking about with KPJ?
Well, we saw in the playoffs where, I mean, when he gets hot, I mean, he's phenomenal. And look, every player tries to get better from season to season, and I'm sure there's some improvement and some things that Gary Trent Jr. can continue to move forward on and continue to go to the next level on. But when I think about your direct question, comparison of Gary Trent Jr.'s maybe ceiling and AJ Green, the one thing I would say is that AJ Green is younger. He already made a leap last year, pretty significantly. He surprised the Bucks, and I know surprised Doc on his defensive capability. And the kid's what did somebody call him? An assassin. I mean, he is just an absolute ice cold, running through the veins 3-point shooter. So I just because of age, and I mean, I think there's probably more upside to AJ Green than Gary Trent Jr. Both are great shooters. And I will say this, you can't, and you know this very well, Van, in today's NBA, you can't surround yourself. You can't build a team with too many shooters. And that's one of the things that excites me about the upcoming Bucks season. We are loaded, and we are just loaded with shooting talent. The key, I think, is to rebuild the defense to a top 5, top 7 defense in the league. With our shooting capability, if we can have a top 5 to top 7 defense, this team's going to go a ways.
I think that the defense to me is like the higher ceiling right now. But as you say, I mean, the Bucks had the best 3-point shooting offense in the league last year. Like they were almost at 39%. I think they had about 0.5% over whoever was in second place, which I forget, might have been Cleveland. Regardless, the Bucks were like just stone cold gunners out there last year. But the volume is something, you know, I know a lot of people would like to see increase because they were middle of the pack, maybe slightly below league average in terms of the percentage of their shot diet that was from deep. And with those guys, particularly Green, you want to see that number continue to go up. I think Trent got up a lot of shots last year, but we want to see, I think, I wouldn't be mad with more from him, but certainly we want to see more AJ Green. And that's music to the ears of Kyle, who's like AJ Green's #1 fan, and just a lot of us. We're big AJ Green fans over at Brew Hoop. And to your point about the defense, one thing I'm curious to hear about, and maybe if this was a focus for him in the offseason or just something maybe the coaching staff has worked with him on, is more of his team defense, because I agree, like he surprised a lot of us in terms of his on-ball defensive capabilities. Like I remember, I don't think it was last season. I think it was late in the season before, where he just locked up Tyrese Maxey for an entire fourth quarter. That was really cool. It was like, we didn't know he had that in him. But then there were also times last year, late in games. I remember, I believe it was a game against Houston, where, just he went with the wrong assignment. So team defense is something I'd like to see improve from him. And to me, that's all like just familiarization, and like just not as much of an instinctual or physically based thing as individual defense is, which I think he already has like some chops with. So I'd like to know and like to see, how has he been studying like the scheme and just trying to work better within the flow of a defense, because I think that's the one thing that's holding him back on that end of the floor. I'm excited to hear those.
He's picking up a lot of nitpicky fouls.
Yes, he was also getting a lot of whistles. And I think part of that is, he's a young player, and refs are trying to maybe like teach him the hard way about what works and what doesn't in the league, and he's not going to get away with things that vets do. But yeah, I'm intrigued by your prediction here that because he made this big leap last year, which I forget if that was his second into his, no, I think that was it his second into his third year, or was his third into his fourth year? Regardless, you think he's got another. Yeah, he had a two-way for a year. Then he's still on that. Yeah, he's still on the same contract I think he signed after that. And he's eligible for an extension, which we hope will be coming soon. But hearing that there might be another leap in there, that's pretty cool.
And speaking of defense, I think you're going to see on the second, on the rotation, I think you're going to see a lot of Jericho Sims. That kid has got leaping ability and defensive ability. And the first thing that he said to Doc Rivers when Doc sat him down when he came over in a trade was, I can defend 1 through 5. And he meant it. I think he's going to be a real cog in the second unit in terms of defensive capability.
He's someone I'm excited about too. I'm glad you brought him up. I was listening to Here District with Marcus and Chris Johnson recently, and I forget who they were talking to, but they were it was a writer. I forgot his name, Jason somebody. Bad radio for me, but he made the point that with Giannis's jumper now like extending out to that 18 feet range, like he was one of the top shooters in the league between the 16 foot arc and the 3-point arc this past year. it seems like it's for real. We're seeing some of it in the Euros too. If he's now like, I'm not gonna get crazy here and think like, okay, he's gonna extend it way out to like the Damian Lillard territory. But even if that's more respected of a shot, how that opens up more spacing inside, particularly for a guy like Sims, because we didn't now, of course, Sims, he was dealing with an injury towards the end of the regular season. We didn't see a ton of him on the floor with Giannis, but as a defender and a screener and an athlete, I think he's checking all those boxes and like with flying colors. But as far as how he works with Giannis, I mean, I want to see that combination because we didn't really see it too much last year. And, like seeing how he could, especially like leverage the athleticism, not just on defense, but maybe as a screening partner for Giannis or something. It's not something I really would have thought of as like something I want to see, from the Bucks early in the year. And that's a good, that's a good segue into where we're going to go next, because it's a long regular season. And I mean, what is it? It goes literally 6 months, and 82 games.
It's a grind. Yeah,
exactly. And I always like to joke about with my other colleagues at Brew Hoop how there's always that Tuesday night game. It's always on the road. We used to say like Orlando, but Orlando's very good now, or Detroit. They're very good. So now it's like Washington or Charlotte, or like it's January, whatever. It's Tuesday night. Like it might not be the most compelling matchup, but it's still NBA basketball. It's still the Bucks, and we want to watch it. But like, what's maybe a little, and like sort of like a almost like a pet project or pet interest you have, like something that when you're like that will a point of interest for you that would make these 82 games, especially with some of these Tuesday nighters in February, what would make watching them worthwhile? Something you hope that they'll do that will hold your interest and you'd like to see develop.
The first thing, and we kind of alluded to it earlier, is I would love to see in January, in the middle of a snowstorm and the Bucks playing a team. Oh God. I would love to see Giannis's 27th consecutive triple-double.
Oh, wow.
So the triple-double watch, I think, will be very interesting to follow during the course of the season. And if he is on that kind of a roll, I think you're going to see a very successful team.
So you're going to be just at every game when you're sitting by the court, you're just going to be like checking off a rebound there, assist there, assist there, assist there. You just count along with the rest of us,
exactly,
just to see how many he gets, and then you can take another. You just like put another notch on. You don't have the headboard, so maybe just the floor right behind it. Just take the pen knife and just get another notch on the floor.
Just notch it down there. Exactly.
There's triple double number 18.
And then I want to make sure that Thanasis, in his enthusiasm, does not injure Doc.
So you'll also be watching Thanasis out.
You're right. We've seen Thanasis leaping up, running down the court, and almost having a collision with the head coach. Right.
And when he was sitting courtside in games in Milwaukee last year, it's like he's up, like he's bouncing around just like he would be if he was sitting on the bench. So yes, we'll see a lot of that this year. But yeah, Doc, he's it's funny because like I remember Bud 1 year, he had, was it foot surgery or knee surgery in the off season?
Yeah, foot surgery.
Right. It was foot surgery, and I remember he comes in, after game, he's walking pretty gingerly and everything like that. I at one point I remember I think he was in like
he was in a boot.
It was a boot, yeah. And I want to say like, did he have I may be getting him confused with, because I remember Dante DiVincenzo had the little scooter, but I'm trying to think if I saw Bud using one of those once, like back in the.
Actually, he did have a scooter.
Okay, so I'm not making things up. He was there. At some point underneath Pfizer Forum, I saw him with a scooter. So, but Doc, he's he played. He was in the league for a long time, and he's a bit older than Bud. We've got to watch out for him. His back and everything we got to watch out for Thanasis with him. So you'll be counting up the triple doubles, but you're also going to be like maybe Gale. What you can do is, do you remember when Taylor Jenkins was on the Bucks coaching staff, now former Grizzlies head coach? It was always amusing to us, watching the team on TV, how and I'm sure you saw it too, how like if there was any sort of maybe like a little kerfuffle on the floor or something like that, he would just get in front of the bench right away and just for those not watching on YouTube, just like stretch his arms out, like hold everyone back.
Chill, hang tight.
Is that going to be you between Thanasis and Doc?
No, but I'm
going to run over there.
I'm hoping it'll be Darvin Ham, or I just wave.
Okay. Sure. Yeah. Darvin Darvin he's probably he may be taller than Thanasis, so yes, he might be the best choice. So he might be the guy who just like immediately gets up from his seat and just throws out his arms. But I know you sit pretty close to them too, so maybe you can be his backup.
Well, I don't think they're paying me enough for that, but we'll give it a shot.
Well, all right. Well, I'll be now. I have another thing, a little like personal interest to keep an eye on this year too. So now moving into a little bit more of the quicker hits here, as we conclude our Bucks focused portion of the podcast. What do you think is the team's greatest weakness currently and their greatest strength?
I would say on the weakness piece, the need to improve the point of attack defense. Very obvious, but I think that's a huge key. Strength won't surprise anybody. We've got a generational superstar, and I think surrounding him now in terms of strength with pieces that can really gel a team that can compete and win.
These might be like classic answers, but and not novel, but they're bang on correct. I mean, it's Giannis, and I have talked about this year with this summer with a number of people. You have Miles Turner up there now, and you have Bobby Portis still in the front court rotation, and Jericho Sims is your like essentially your third center.
Right.
And you also have, Kyle Kuzma is naturally a 4. And maybe, you can think of like Taurean Prince, he played a bit of 4 last year, but you put all that together and really just those top 2 guys, the Giannis and Turner. Is this the best front court in the league?
It could be. It could be. Time will tell, but it could be. It could be.
It's got a case. I mean, the other contenders, obviously, you got Denver. Cleveland is up there, but I just think like they have like you're talking about the 2 best players in the NBA with Cleveland, or I'm sorry, with Denver and Milwaukee,
right?
But like the combination of offense and defense right there, that to me puts it over the top. And of course OKC, we saw how they succeeded in the playoffs with a very like a traditional center, and then a more versatile inside-outside defender in Chet Holmgren, who sounds a little bit like Giannis to me. So it's
there you go.
It's a way that the league seems to maybe be moving now. Like obviously Cleveland's been doing it for a few years, and they have you look at that front court and you see the similarities too. So yes, that front court, I'm excited to see like just how productive it can be on both ends. Now The next one is fill in the blank. In order for the Bucks to win a title, they must blank. And as we always say, you can't say win 4 playoff series or or 16 games in April through June. What must they do?
Well, I would defer to what John Horst always says. To win a title, you got to have 3 things. You got to be good, you got to be healthy, and you got to have a little luck.
Mm-hmm.
I think the Bucks are good. Health is going to be a huge, huge issue. And we need a little bit of luck. But I will say this, when you look at the schedule, when you look at the regular season schedule, it's a bit, and I don't want to overstate this, but a bit easier than last year's regular season schedule. There are fewer back-to-backs. There are fewer games where we're going to have less rest than the opposing team. We're going to be gone for a big chunk of January, which, given Milwaukee weather in January, might not be a bad
thing. Yeah.
I think the schedule is slightly less physically taxing because of the fewer back-to-backs and the fewer games where we have less rest than the opposing team. And the team is younger.
Yep.
So I think, again, you put those 3 elements together. You got to be good. We've got a lot of talent. The defense has to improve. We've got to stay healthy, and we got to have a little bit of luck.
It's funny thinking about just how this team has, I guess what's the opposite of aged? Youthened. That's not something. It's not a word we typically use in English because time goes only one direction. But the 15-man roster right now, average age is, I believe, 27, just over 27.1, and the only guys north of 30 are Giannis, Bobby Portis, Taurean Prince, and Gary Harris. And we're talking, these guys are barely 30. Right. And then, of course, Thanasis became the elder statesman on the team very recently. So, if you take him out, that average age is going to drop. I think, doing some quick math here, it drops another year or so down to 26. So, and they have less back-to-backs to deal with too.
Right, exactly.
For their younger legs, isn't
it amazing? There are only 2 players left on the roster on this what will be a 15-person roster. Only 2 players left from the 2021 championship.
There's 3 now. One came back.
Vanessa's, yeah, that's a good.
Yes. I was thinking that too, and he came back. It's I saw some picture last year of maybe ring night or some picture of the whole team after the title, and it was just the only people who were still, it was a black and white photo. The only people who were still in color were Giannis and Bobby Portis, and this is kind of sad. But now there'd be a third one, be Thanasis.
Now they've got company.
Yeah, exactly. Well, okay. As we reflect, we get all wistful about that team, and how successful they were in the postseason, and how their regular season they were always a 50-win team. Even if you just take that 72-game championship season, by win percentage, they were a 50-win team, definitely. So to get back to that level this year, you said get healthy, good, luck, very, very important. But in the regular season, where do you see them finishing, as far as their place in the East? And then it's been since 2022 since they've won a playoff series. And I mean, I'm sure you'll agree, it's just I've been just jonesing every year for a deep playoff run, not just because I want to see the Bucks do well, but it's fun, and it's good for us at Brew Hoop. We get to talk about the Bucks more. We get to do more stuff like this, and we get to do it later into our spring and into the summer. And we just have had to kind of close up shop in May for a month or so the last few years. I don't want that to happen again. So how far do you think they'll go?
Again, it's going to turn on health, but I could see, if things go right, this team being in the Eastern Conference Finals.
Mm-hmm.
And at that point, as you know, anything can happen.
Mm-hmm.
Now that's a tall prediction. And
Mm-hmm.
the first leg of that prediction would have to be a 50-win season or more, I think.
Yeah.
Position the team well in terms of playoff, home court advantage, et cetera. But if the team can win at least 50 games, that means they will have gelled. That means the defense will have improved. That means the shooters are shooting. And if they're healthy, I could see this team at least get to the Eastern Conference Finals. That would be my hope.
Yeah, certainly. I think that's a lot of people's maybe hopeful projection, but I think, with the state of the East right now, with a team that has a lot of postseason question marks still in Cleveland, a new coach in New York, obviously a injury depleted Pacers and Celtics, who were the two of the top teams last year, not likely to be players at that point. It's open. The East is just open for business. So I think, it's one of those things, why not the Bucks? And
right.
do you see them, being able to get one of those, how about, you say 50 wins, but do you think one of the top two seeds, do you think that would be enough? If they're over 50 wins, do you think that'd be enough to get them one of those top two seeds?
I think it would get them either the second seed or third seed. That would be my guess. And hopefully second seed. But I have a fantasy for you.
Oh, let's hear it.
Here's my fantasy. I saw
this is a family podcast, Gale, but I'm just kidding. It's actually really not a family podcast. We swear a lot, but please.
Well, you remember Chris Middleton going to Washington. And I saw a completely speculative article the other day that really caught my interest.
I know where this is going, and I've had this fantasy too.
So things don't go well in Washington. They realize by past the All-Star break, they've really got to dump salary. They've really got to start the rebuilding process. And they buy out Chris Middleton's contract. He becomes a free agent, and he's back for the playoff run with the Bucks. Wouldn't that be incredible?
You are far from the only one among our little circle of Bucks analysts and podcasters who's had that fantasy, and it's not just a pie in the sky either, because with the Bucks dipping under this, not just the second apron, but also the first apron coming into this year. Now, if Chris Middleton, whatever happens to him through the deadline, he could be traded somewhere. But if he's bought out, his salary for next season, I believe, is about $33.5 million. It's above the mid-level exception, which is about 14.4, I think, for this year. And a team that was over the first apron, I believe it was either first or second, but a team that was over that would not have been able to sign a player who's making
that kind of money,
more than that mid-level exception as a buyout player late in the season. The Bucks don't have that problem anymore. So if Steph Curry was bought out at the deadline, then the Bucks would be one of the teams that could sign him. But I think I don't think that's a far-fetched situation at all. And I mean, I'm going to be watching the situation there very closely around the trade deadline to see what might happen, because I mean, we're all big Cash Money fans over at Brew Hoop, as I know a lot of Bucks fans are. And I mean, we saw what he did in the postseason 2 years ago, which was kind of just that last little reminder, he's still absolute nails when it comes to the playoffs. And him being back with the team and even giving them 50% of that, I think would just be so cool.
Be awesome, wouldn't it?
I know. So shout out to you, Chris. You're going to be in the rafters at Fiserv someday, but hopefully there's one more time we see 22 on the floor in the coming seasons. I have some optimism about it. So we have reached now the end of the Bucks segment, and we are on to our very popular miscellaneous segment. And I know, it's since we've only got me on today, and we of course we will turn the floor over to you. I thought maybe today would be a good time to bring back my segment. And I know, Gale, you had your start in radio,
Right.
and I know you talked about it a bit on our pod last year, but I'll be curious to hear a bit more about it, and you can remind our listeners of it too. But I think you'll appreciate my segment, which is entitled Vans Warped Tour, which is if have you heard of Vans Warped Tour? Like, not my segment, but the concept, like the music festival.
I have honestly not heard of that.
It is Vans, the sneakers, they were the sponsors of this traveling music festival that was all the rage in like the 2000s and the early 2010s. I guess it went away for a while, but now it's back. But I just, saw there are all kinds of kids in high school like wearing the t-shirts. It wasn't necessarily my kind of music that was at this like part of these festivals. It was, kind of like punk, emo type stuff. But it was a fitting title for my segment, which just is where I tell the listeners about my warped music tastes and what kind of stuff I'm listening to lately.
Okay.
And there's been all kinds of wacky stuff in here, but I think you will appreciate something that's been on heavy rotation for me in the last week or so. And it's by the Traveling Willburys. If you're,
okay.
Yeah. So if for those who are unfamiliar, this was one of the first, I would say, super bands. Like we talk about super teams in the NBA, your super groups. They were just around for a few years when I was like, they were around when I was alive, but I was not old enough to know who they were. But you'll certainly know who all these guys were: Bob Dylan, George Harrison, Jeff Lynne from ELO, Electric Light Orchestra, Tom Petty, and Roy Orbison. They got together and recorded 2 albums. And the song that I've always known who these guys were, but I haven't really listened to their music that they did together. Of course, like, we know all of their music individually, but they wrote a song on their first album, which was called Tweeter and the Monkey Man. Have you ever heard this song, Gale, by any chance?
Honestly, have not.
All right. Well, I mean, I hadn't until like last week, and it's quite an interesting tune. And this segment has always been like, there's been some pretty obscure artists I've talked about. Like usually they've often had a connection with Germany, some Finnish experimental music, things like that we've talked about on here. So talking about like a Western, like English speaking group is kind of unique, but this song is just, it's so fascinating to me. It was mostly written by Dylan and I guess a bit by Petty, and it's a pretty long tune. It's probably about like 5 or 6 minutes long, but it's just a story that I guess Dylan and maybe Petty too, they just kind of sat down one day, like like with the other guys around, and they just started making up this story and like bouncing stuff back and forth off each other. And then Jeff Lynne and George Harrison were there, and like, well, they're like, we don't know what's going on, but they started writing it down and recording it. But Dylan sings lead on it, and it sounds just, I mean, it's a Bob Dylan song for sure. It sounds like a Bob Dylan song, but it's because, I mean, he's telling a story that he made up, but it's heavily influenced. And this is why I heard this recently, because it was on like I was listening to Bruce Springsteen and it came up like on Bruce Springsteen radio or whatever on Spotify. This song is kind of their a little bit of a tongue-in-cheek sort of a homage to Bruce Springsteen, because you'll find a lot of some titles of his songs in it, like Thunder Road. They talk about Rahway Prison. This song takes place in New Jersey, and uses some of the themes in the Boss's music. But this needs to be a movie. Like, I can't believe it's not a movie. This song could be made into a movie because it's about Tweeter and the Monkey Man, who are both drug dealers in Jersey. Probably, yeah, we'll say sometime. It makes reference to one of them being in Vietnam, so we'll say in the 70s to 80s. They are being pursued throughout this song by an undercover cop who has a sister who has had this long, like, romantic some sort of connection with the Monkey Man. And even though she's married, and she's married to a racketeer, but which is interesting, like she's married to the racketeer. Her brother is a cop, an undercover cop, like a detective. But the Monkey Man and the cop and his sister all must have grown up together, because there's some deep-seated animus there from the cop to the Monkey Man. Maybe it's going back to childhood. Maybe he's resentful that, like, he's kind of screwing with his sister's marriage. But his sister's very loyal to the Monkey Man, but maybe not to Tweeter. And yeah, there's a bit of a showdown, and I can't really spoil it because I don't, it's unclear exactly what happened. But when I was listening to the song and then looking up the lyrics, it's like, how has no one not made a movie about this? Like, this is a screenplay right there. I mean, I had half a mind, like, I don't know anything. I'm on the first thing about writing a screenplay, but I could just be like, well, maybe I should try doing this.
There you go.
Maybe, I don't know, Marcus Johnson, he's writing screenplays. Maybe he can give me some pointers. So
you and Marcus can collaborate.
That's right. You'll see us, Academy Awards in a few years. We'll be sitting next to each other, or they'll maybe not sit next to each other, but they'll show me and we'll show him, like, side by side. Like, we're nominated for best adapted screenplay. That's the dream right there. So yes, the Stop on the Warp Tour this week.
Will you invite me to the after party?
Of course. Yes, we're inviting. We'll invite the entire Bucks organization if this ever happens. Like, we'll see what we can do. Maybe maybe Gale, like, if you can call up, like, commissioner's office and just try to get them, like, their West Coast road trip, like their LA back to back, just have that right around Academy Awards time. I think that's going to work out for everybody. So yes, did you ever when you were in radio, were you more on the talk side, or were you doing music?
No, I never did music. I was a newscaster.
Newscast. Okay. When there was news on the radio,
when there was news on the radio, and then a news director. But
okay.
I really never did the music side. Although sure. I do have a quick crazy story for you.
Yes.
So this is years ago, and it was my first news director job, and it was at an AM and FM combination station in Atlanta.
Okay.
And the FM, in the early days of rock and roll FM radio, we ended up hosting Ringo Starr.
Okay.
Ringo Starr had starred literally in some kind of B movie. It was a horror movie. It was a scary movie that they basically premiered in Atlanta on Halloween.
Okay.
And for whatever reason, he agreed to do an appearance with us. And the program director and I, as a publicity stunt, he flew into the Atlanta airport on private plane. We picked him up in a hearse at the Atlanta airport, had a police escort, and drove him through downtown Atlanta in a hearse to our studio, where we did an interview with him. And then we escorted him to the theater where there was going to be the unveiling of this movie in a hearse. So that's my crazy rock and roll story for you.
How did that go over with Ringo? Did you like it?
Ringo got a big kick out of it.
Good. Okay. Yeah. I feel like
a big kick out of it.
It's like, I mean, at that stage, I'm sure this was like Ringo is much younger, but it's like you gotta be careful with rock stars of a certain. Well, I mean, rock stars of any age. I mean, you look at like Janis Joplin, Jim Morrison, Kurt Cobain. They all died at 27. So, but Ringo's still with us. That's pretty cool. So I know that they've had on Here District they've had some not just basketball royalty, but also like showbiz and music royalty. They had Ice Cube on there. Do you think we'll be hearing Ringo, Richard Starkey? We're going to be hearing Richard Starkey on Bucks Plus next year. Like, can you work that connection? See what he knows about hoops.
Yeah, well, it'd be interesting to see if he knows anything about hoops.
I know. It's like, well, Ringo, like, who would you say plays basketball the most like you drum? That's the first thing I would ask.
That's a great question.
All these connections between basketball and music, like specifically jazz, we hear that a lot, but rock and roll, yeah. And then you had guys like Bill Walton, who is like basically in the Grateful Dead. Anyway, so enough of the Warped Tour. We have a recurring segment for all of our guests. We offer them one, like you can have one if you want. If you don't, that's fine, but it'd be cool if we have one. And I'm grateful that this is going to recur again, just like it has for some of our other friends who have joined us from outside Brew Hoop on the season previews this year. So Gale's segment. Gale is a bit of a globetrotter. He likes to he's a jet setter. He likes to travel around this country and abroad and across large bodies of water. Although I'm not sure if there's going to be one of those that we're talking about today, but it's called Gallivanting with Gale is the segment. And I'm kind of wondering why we didn't just call it like Galevanting. But regardless, please tell us about your latest travels since you were last on the pod, where I think you talked about going to Maui.
Yeah. And actually, I was very relieved. We went to Maui in February. But
must be nice.
Maui was spectacular, and we had not been there before. But what I was relieved about, man, was I had to do Courtside while we were in Maui, and I was really, really sweating whether the hotel had good Wi-Fi. Yeah. And as luck would have it, it had great Wi-Fi. So
there you go.
But Dave Kane, the play-by-play guy for the Bucks, was my guest that week, and he outed me. No one would have ever known that we were doing this show remotely from Maui.
I remember this because I heard about this. I listened to this. Dave got you, I guess.
He did. But we had and I would highly recommend this. We had a great trip this summer. Now my wife and I are not skiers. So if we go to a ski resort, we tend to do it in the summertime. And we had not been before, and we heard it was phenomenal, and it really is. We went to Big Sky, Montana. The natural beauty in Big Sky is just absolutely sensational. I would put it among the most beautiful places we have ever had a chance to visit. And on the way, you fly into Bozeman. And on the way, it's about an hour drive, Big Sky is, from Bozeman. On the way, you see incredible water rafting. So it is just, the whole experience was just terrific. But if you're into natural beauty, Big Sky, Montana can't be beat. And then just reminiscing, my wife and I were talking about this just the other day. This month marks the 30th anniversary of the month that we were parachuted into England. The company I was working for at the time was the first American company to buy a British energy company.
Okay.
And I was asked to go be the CEO of this company in England. I had never been to England before, and we got parachuted in there, and it turned out to be an incredible experience.
Wow.
But we're reminiscing about our 3.25 years as an expat in England. Tremendously broadening experience. We were based about 2 hours due west of London, in what they call England's second city, which is Bristol. And then we serve the area from Bristol, which is about the size, population-wise, of Metro Milwaukee, from Bristol all the way to Land's End. The West Country of England is spectacular. And if you ever get an opportunity to vacation in the West Country of England, I would absolutely recommend it. Just beautiful. It's as beautiful as the coastline of California.
Ah, okay, yeah, and I've driven up the PCH, and I know it can get a little rugged along some of the. I know like the Irish coast and also like some of the British coast, like in terms of cliffs and stuff like that. That's really neat. I have a few questions. The parachuting thing. I have to like the image I have of you in my head is remember the opening ceremony of the 2012 games in London, the Olympics.
Right.
They have they have James Bond, Daniel Craig, and the Queen. I'm using air quotes for those of you listening because this was not the Queen. They parachuted in to, I guess it was probably Wembley Stadium there, as part of this opening ceremony. And of course, like, you know, they had the whoever, you know, the stunt diver was in the like the Queen's get up, like they hit him and then the Queen actually came out and that was the Queen's unveil. So I'm just thinking of you like with the James Bond like Union Jack parachute like coming in. Where did you parachute in? Was it Bristol there? Like what was or was it just like a parachuting trip, or was it just for
no I meant
fun?
that only in that we were sent in.
Oh.
No, we actually
literally.
We were sent
like,
in.
wow, I didn't peg you as a skydiver. Okay. Yeah, parachute. That's true. That is a term people use for their stints in, like far away from home for a little while. Okay. Well, I can't. I won't live that one down. I can't edit it out either. So that's all right. But so Big Sky, Montana. I was looking this up. It's close to Yellowstone.
Yes.
And I'm curious a little bit because I've not been to this part of the country. Like it in terms of first of all, what time like what month were you there?
We went late June, early July.
So was all the snow gone, or were you not high enough? Okay.
No. In when we could see from our hotel, we could see snow on the mountains.
Okay.
But where we were, highs in the daytime would be like low 70s, get down in the high 40s at night. Spectacular.
Yeah. And with the rafting, this parts of the country I'm a little bit more familiar with, which have maybe similar types of like recreation and like in the Sierras in California. I've never done any rafting or anything like that, but and also in Colorado along the Colorado River around that time of year in the very early days of summer, and just like the because it's all snow melt probably that's feeding these rivers and these streams. But how about waterfalls? Any of those around there? Some good waterfalls?
There are a couple of not too difficult hikes where you encounter spectacular waterfalls. Just the wonder of nature. We were just blown away by just the sheer natural beauty.
Yeah. And did you hike around any of those waterfalls or like up them or anything?
We did, although we didn't go too far. Because of the signs that say "Beware of bears."
Oh, okay. They've got.
My wife is not fond of bears.
They've got what? Do they have grizzlies in Yellowstone area? I think
grizzlies do. Grizzlies and black bears.
Yeah, you do not want to screw around with grizzlies. A black bear, just keep your food away from them and don't screw with their cubs. But yeah, grizzly bear. Yeah, that's fair. I was at Yosemite a number of years ago towards the end, like kind of early spring. And we hiked up the falls there which is, the base of the valley. If you've been there, it's about 4,500 feet, and the top of the falls is about 75 to 8.
Wow.
So it's quite a bit of a hike, and the snow is pretty thick up there too. But bears in the valley there, they still have A lot of black bears. There are none of the California brown bears around there anymore. But yeah, we had the bear box and everything like that to keep our food in at night, because you don't want to keep it in their car. They will get in your car.
Oh yeah, exactly. Yeah, and mess up your car big time.
They had some pictures there at the ranger station. Like, you want your car to look like this? Don't put food in it at night. Put it in the bear box. Well, Gale, it's been great to talk with you and hear about your travels. Montana, yeah, that's a place I really should make it to, especially like the western part of it. And appreciate hearing all of your thoughts and insights about the Bucks, and learning some neat little factoids about like some of the stuff behind the scenes. And you can hear more of those if you listen to Courtside with Gale Klappa on Bucks Plus Audio. This time you tell our listeners everywhere you can hear your voice.
Well, you can hear the podcast again during the regular season. We'll start up again the week before the regular season, so the week of October 15. And the podcast, Courtside with Gale Klappa, is available, Van, as you said, anywhere you get your podcasts. And Van, what fun to be with you. Thanks so much for having me. We really appreciate it.
Hey, it was our pleasure, Gale, and we'll hope to have you back sometime maybe later this year. And hey, we'll do one of these next year maybe too. So thanks again. Yeah, and we will be back with more season previews. We're going strong. We're getting one out every week until we make it to opening night in mid to late October. You will hear some more Brew Hoopers on the pod. We have coming up later in this month, Jim Paschke and Lisa Byington will join us. We also have Harris Stavro from Sport 24 in Europe, who is very busy covering Greece right now in Eurobasket, as Greece at this point, they have advanced into the quarterfinals. They will play Lithuania tomorrow. And we wish him lots of luck, because he's Greek and he really cares about them. But of course, Giannis and Thanasis and Kostas and all of them, hope we'll be talking a lot about Eurobasket with him. So thanks again for listening to us. We will talk to you next time on Dear Diaries.